First degree, you should answer.
It is still, you need to switch on.
Already.
Oh, yeah. To wake up everyone.
Okay. Geshe, so this question, just on Geshe, you mentioned about the self. You know, you were analyzing whether the self is separate from the aggregates. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Geshe, in for Chinese, yeah, for Chinese people, we have a concept called 灵魂, a soul. In English, it's something like a soul. So this concept is very important for Chinese. If we go around telling Chinese that there is no self, separate, this self that's separate from the aggregates does not exist, you will scare off a lot of Chinese people. Yeah. So the question is, isn't there a soul which is separate? Yeah, it's like a self which is separate from the aggregates. This soul, when we die, the soul will go to, if you, unfortunately, most Chinese believe that the soul will go to lower realms. I don't know why. Yeah, somebody goes, when we were small, we thought that way. But so therefore, you need to do a lot of merits for the soul that go to the. So like that, how do we manage this question? I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I don't have the answer. I think soul is, we don't use that words in Buddhist because the soul, the concept of soul in other spiritual paths, I think it might be more to do with permanent kind of soul or mind, and because we don't accept permanent. But even though there is no concept of such permanent self, permanent mind, soul, but still there is a concept of the self that continues from one life to another life. So I don't think there will be conflictions to believe that there is continuity after this life. But to have a continuity in this life, it doesn't have to be permanent soul or permanent self. There's, as we discussed, conventional self that continues, carrying the karmic imprint. Depending on their karmic imprint, they could be born in a lower rebirth or a higher rebirth, different state of higher rebirth, different state of lower rebirth. So at least that is Buddhist understanding. So it's not like everything ceases, like some modern materialistic view. The modern materialist view is when you die, then everything's finished. That's the end. Nothing continues. In Buddhist, the mind continues, the self continues. So, and so therefore, there's there's an ancestor, maybe even though I don't know enough from the Chinese Taoists, I think probably that is influence of the Taoisms. I don't know enough about that to really talk about it. Even though in Buddhism we don't believe that there's your ancestors permanently did all the time in that the way you see it. But there is ancestor inward, they have taken rebirth in different forms in that, but they are there, So yeah. Yes, please. Well,
Second question actually come from Zoom.
mm-hmm.
Yesterday, when Geshe was talking about the energy, positive energy and negative energy that we attract. The question is, what happens if the negative energy is directed towards oneself and it causes oneself to become depressed? How to handle that?
Negative energy attracted by others or by oneself?
By oneself towards oneself.
Mm-hmm. When we are dealing with issues such as low self-esteem, self-hatred, depressions, it depends on the level of the depressions. If it's not too intense, or the level of depression not too strong, maybe we can manage with meditation practices. When someone has reached very low and very strong, just meditation might not be helpful. You need special assistance, whether it's medications, whether it's seeing psychologists, therapists. Sometimes we become very stubborn, that we feel that I don't need to rely on them. I can manage with my practice meditations. And sometimes that can be not so helpful. So we have to understand what level it is. When it's still mild, through practice meditation, certain way of meditating, thinking, and uplifting your mind, because your mind is becoming low. That's why someone is in depression, your mind is very low. So you can do that to uplift, and it can be helpful without relying on medication and that. But then when your depression has gone certain level and very low, then if you don't take the help from special who are expert in that area. So we try to, in that case, you also take the assistance from the medicines, psychologists, therapists, as well as your practice meditation combined all together. And as someone improve that, then slowly, maybe we become less and less dependent on, whether it's medicine, whether it's therapy, and then slowly we can manage ourselves. That is, that is my advice. I've often sometimes seen certain patients who come to the monasteries or centers feeling they can those can help them, and then they stop taking medication, stop doing all this, and then things get worse instead of being helpful. They are unable to manage because they don't take the medication, and because it will take time to time for them to work with their mind, to practice meditation, to build a strong practice. And then slowly you started to reduce, and then slowly, so it depends on that, that is one thing. And then, in terms of practice meditations, we are depressed because our mind is very low due to different factors, conditions, different instance in our life, situation in our life. And sometimes, who knows, it might be something genetic as well sometimes, But again, in terms of what we need is uplift. And so meditating on something that is uplifting, meditating on precious human rebirth, meditating on Buddha nature, meditating, that our basic nature is pure, that we are basically, fundamentally, we are not bad. Because sometimes when someone is depressed, sometimes they might blame themselves and feel bad about themselves, that they are not a good person, they are not good enough, all of that. So, and then sometimes you believe that you are fundamentally flawed and bad. But then we meditate from Buddhist point of view, fundamentally, on that fundamental level, we are not flawed and bad. Fundamentally, we are altruistic, pure, undiluted. That is the basic nature of our mind, unpolluted, undiluted in its nature. And so recognizing that, meditating on that can be also helpful to uplift and to see our incredible potentials through the precious human rebirth and Buddha nature. Sometimes we might limit our own potentials, especially when we have, when our mind is low, then we can kind of diminish our own potentials, So to counter that kind of state of mind, you need something that uplifts and recognize your incredible potential. That, just because you are not good at something doesn't mean you are incapable. You might not be so good at that, but you are good at something. So you focus on something that you are good at, not on something that you are not good at. When you focus on something that you are not so great on or good at, then that can bring those negative feelings that you are incapable or you can't do this and that, So, and we, as a ordinary sentient beings, we all have our weakness, our strength. We have our own weakness and we have our individual strength and our individual weakness. Some people are good at a certain thing and not good at a certain thing. The other people are good at certain thing that which they are not good and they are not good at certain thing. Some people are very creative, good at that, but they might not be good at certain, other areas. Then some people are really good at math, management, all that, but they might not be very creative in terms. And so everyone has their own different areas where they are good at. And so in such, as an individual, one try to focus on the side that you are good at. And all the people around them, try to help them to see that they are good at this, they are doing well at this, they are managing good at that. And so that can be also something helpful, beneficial to encounter that kind of negative thought, of that feeling that you are not good enough, you are not good at that, you are incapable at this, and based on certain area or certain thing that you are not being able to do good and accomplish, and then on the basis of that, then one can kind of put down oneself very low, saying you are not good for anything or that. So then they need to focus on something they are good at. And so, that is more general. And then in terms of actually Dharma practice itself, then practice human rebirth, meditating on Buddha nature, meditating on benefit of the Bodhicitta mind, benefiting on refuge. So those are some of the meditation that can help to give more strength and uplift our mind, and that can help to overcome that negative mind that kind of draw us into a more depressive, dark state of mind. Yeah. Yes, please.
Looks like no battery.
Yeah.
I think
Maybe you have too much strong energy.
Question. So when we walk the Bodhisattva path, so I'm wondering what kind of practices we can increase our sensitivity for inner awareness and tenet for sentient beings. So
Eager awareness and
tenet means the
inner awareness and tenet, so that we can sense the sentient beings who needed to help, or we can help to relieve their suffering. I give an analogy. So, for example, there is an earthquake. So there are victims trapped underground. Those who are shouting out loud, help, help, that with our normal aggregates, five senses, we know immediately where to look for them. So those are quite easy to be identified. But we do have people who are trapped but unable to voice out. So then that are the people who urgently need help, that we need to prioritize on them as well. And the crucial time to save them is really time sensitive. We need to go to them. So in fortunately, in the ordinary world, we have canine unit with dogs, but trained to smell and also hear subtle sound that maybe we can locate, or maybe we have device. But as us walking towards, progress in Bodhisattva path, so what kind of practices can we increase this sensitivity, like as if like canine unit come and help to we find the victims? How can we also develop something like that, our skill, to increase our sensitivity in identifying those who need help? Thank you, Krishna.
Okay. Thank you. I have to develop that antenna. Is anyone willing to invest? I need an investor. In Adisha's Lamb of the Path, I know he explained why we need to develop shamatha. Of course, in all, as you are going through the, Shantideva, in that chapter, they talk about why we need to develop the wisdom. Shamatha, because we need to develop the wisdom. Most of the teachings that you see that why we need to develop shamatha, because we need to develop the special insight, the wisdom. And in order to develop that special insight, wisdom that can cut the root of all the suffering in the samsara, then you need the shamatha. Adisha, he explains slightly different, even though he doesn't even though that is also the main, but in Lamma Path, he talked about the need to develop shamatha so that we can develop clairvoyance, psychic power, clairvoyance, so that we can help sentient beings. If you had a clairvoyance, psychic power, then you can read other people's mind. One of the clairvoyance, to be able to reach someone's mind, what is going in there. So in that way, we know if someone is going through some, mental challenges, difficulty, and they're shy to speak, they're shy to share, they're afraid to share whatever, not being able to come forward to ask for help, to share theirs. If someone has that, then they can read that and they can reach out that, so to do. And then, in some cases, also there are many different levels of clairvoyance, clairvoyance of seeing past, futures, karmic, what kind of karmic result of that in the past. And so when you understand all of that, then you have more tools to help and benefit others. So that can be one of the antennas, to develop the psychic power or clairvoyance, as Lama has explained. That is where he explained we need to develop shamatha so we can develop clairvoyance so that we can use that clairvoyance to help and benefit sentient beings. So yeah. And then of course, also when someone has strong mindfulness practices, and strong awareness, also they are able to observe and see things better, through their strong awareness and mindfulness. They can observe, they can see something, there is something happening there through their expression, through their reactions, through their way of thinking, and they can notice some things that person or that being needs some help. And so then one can reach out and find out what their help and whether one can be able to help oneself or to be able to find another help for them. So then that way we can help benefit as well. Yeah.
Yes. Me, the
Children, I have this bad habitual tendency to get bored easily. To get bored easily.
So like, I'm saying.
So like investigating where the mind is it in my toe, is it in my foot, is it in my hand, and I do it and I get bored. So how to not get bored doing this kind of investigation and then you can progress.
Then you can do other analysis. If you get bored with one particular analysis, you learn those different analyses, and you can use different analyses, and it's the same.
Similar, not multiple.
Yeah, one, multiple, or dependent arising, the 7 analyses of the tenet, or the 4 possibility is from its own side, is from others, is from both, yeah. So there are so many different analyses.
Yeah.
You get bored with all of them, then you just sleep.
Maybe I haven't learned enough. All the different topics.
Yeah, you can learn those different analyses and see which analysis that you find more effective and strong, and then you learn more about that, more intensely about that, and try to apply that. And sometimes maybe and sometimes some of those practice meditation analysis, you can adjust a little bit without losing the essence. And through that, sometimes you can make your own kind of analysis. And that become more interesting to you. Sometimes certain meditation techniques classically presented, sometimes maybe we might find a little bit difficult to connect and find difficult to relate, but sometimes we just change, twist a little bit without losing the essence of that, and you can be creative even in your practice meditations. Creative not just in the outside, but also we can be creative inside. And by being creative, sometimes we can kind of make it a little bit more interesting for oneself. That doesn't become boring as well.
You give an example how we change. I'm not very creative, sorry.
Like classical analysis, it is one or it is multiple. That is more classical than you find in Shantarakshita's coming from that Shandira research, that kind of analysis, whether it's one or multiple from that. But I think that sometimes that analysis, some people might find a little bit more difficult. So therefore, sometimes I try to do more, whether it's one or separate, instead of one or multiple. And sometimes even that, is it one, is it separate from that? Sometimes some people even find more challenging. So then, then trying to find, is this within each part of your body or is this outside the body? So these are a little bit kind of small changes. Basically, the conclusion is same, conclusion same, but it's a slightly different way of doing it. Is analyzing, but those are not exactly same. In essence, they are same, but the way of doing slightly different, And so those are some different examples of that, even with the same, but at the same time slightly different, And yeah, in other practices, as I mentioned before, yesterday, I think like in Bonglen practice, when we take in the sufferings and all the suffering and cause of suffering and destroying our selfish attitude, in classical many texts or practice teaching, they talk about kind of what you call rock, exploding that rock, And sometimes I find a little bit uncomfortable. So then I decide to adapt slightly different as a what you call ice, black ice, and with melting with that. And I find less struggles, more easy to do that. That is my way of doing that. The main point is you take on the sufferings and visualize destroying your selfish attitude. And that is different whatever you do. Another, like, classical visualization, when you do visualizing of nectar and light cleansing all your illness, spirit harm, negative karma, delusions, all the spirit harms in the form of bear, scorpion, and like that, It's hard to imagine bears coming out of your body, scorpion coming out of it, And so sometimes you find, so then you feel uncomfortable, then you have a little bit of difficulty to relate. So I imagine unwanted cell, unwanted, those, in the form of unwanted cell or unwanted values or whatever, in the form of that. So those are very small kind of changes, and that, so you don't have to be hanging out so strongly on that, the way it is described in certain practice, in certain scriptures, in certain meditations. So these are very small changes, and there are from other some example that sometimes I try to do, and I think it is okay, even though I do myself that, but because I have seen, according to different teachers, how they present slightly different meditations, So sometimes different teachers, they don't present exactly same, even though they're relying on same earlier sources of Indian sources or Tibetan sources, but some teachers, I found, even my teachers, when they present the meditation, sometimes there is slightly changes, slightly difference, modified. And so that what it shows is that you don't have to be so rigid and fixed. Sometimes we can modify. Of course, we don't want to lose the essence, what we are doing or what we are doing. But so I think that's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Yes. Yes, please.
Hello.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jason. I have a little bit of lack of clarity, so if my question is confused, then
You will get confusion answer there for that.
Okay, when we're talking about the different types of dependent rising, going from level to level, I like this very better overview. It's more clarity because this topic is not very easy for me. So could Geshe also give the same type of category or related to emptiness as well? Yeah, as in but it's I understand emptiness is a very profound and it has a very broad spectrum, right? So if Geshe could give an overview of the categories, the levels, the layers, the different subtleties of from the basic to the advanced, which I know is very wide. So if you could give an overview, I think that would be very helpful for me. Helicopter view. Because sometimes a lot of practitioners they just jump out, right? So we really cannot see the whole picture. So I would like an overview from different categories, levels, layers, subtleties, and all that. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm planning to do that tomorrow, presentation of that, different level of selflessness, from gross to subtle level of selflessness, how each school of thought present and progress gradually. The early schools presentation selflessness, more gross level, and then next presentation selflessness by minority school become little bit more subtle, more profound, and then the presentation of selflessness according to the Cultivating Madhyamika is more subtle than that, and then Prasangika presentation of the selflessness or emptiness become more subtle, and so how all the presentation on emptiness is not wrong, but it's more gross level. And so it is how we progress from gross to more subtle level. And also, of course, there are certain areas that they disagree and things, but in terms of presentation of selflessness, that one can meditate on each of those layer of different selflessness presented by each of schools, that become more subtle and more subtle. And that is based on in our ignorance. There are many also layer of ignorance, gross ignorance to more subtle level of ignorance. And so those understanding of presentation and understanding of those different level of the selflessness help to overcome those different level of ignorance from gross to more subtle level. Yeah. So it's okay. Is that the question or?
But hopefully it's more okay. But I have because normally people when they talk about emptiness and all dependent arising, see the equate that dependent arising with emptiness. Whereas for me, I find that I think they are slightly separate. They are not the same. They may be related, as you said this morning, they complement each other. So they are separate in a way. But a lot of people say they equate the same, the dependent arising with emptiness. So what does emptiness mean to Geshe? How do you get it? This is an overview for a layman, because I know it's conventional. If you see everything is solid, to the advanced, where you see there's nothing. That one I can accept, but it's in between that I think I'm missing something. From the solid to the non-solid, I get that, but it's the in between part that's missing. So I'm trying to get that missing part. Thank you.
If we are talking about from the Prasangika point of view, inherently existing, independent existence, truly existence, existing by its nature, existing from its own side, existing absolutely, ultimately. All this, we use different terms, but they all mean same in Prasangika point of view. Of course, in some schools, all term might not be same for some schools. But from Prasangika point of view, when we talk about emptiness, we are talking about empty of all of that, empty of absolute existence, or empty of truly existence, ultimately existence. So that's what emptiness is. Empty of truly existing or absolute existence. And as I mentioned today, if something exists absolute, then there's no change. It is that how it is, as we talk about existing by itself as beauty or as attractive, unattractive, good or bad, whatever. If something exists absolutely as goodness, then it will be good, no matter who looks at it, no matter from what point of you look at it, because it's absolute. But the reality is that is not the case. Same thing can be experienced different by different people, different individuals, and therefore is not absolute existence. So empty of absolute existence. So that is what it means, that there is no. So in coming to the questions, as I will mention this morning, probably we might also talk a little bit tomorrow. When you have understanding of dependent arisings on a gross level, it doesn't, you don't have, it helps, but it doesn't necessarily mean you have the realization of emptiness. But when you have the most subtle level of understanding dependent arisings, how everything is dependent on mind, and therefore everything merely imputed, merely designated. The things they exist is on the basis of merely imputation, merely designated. When you have that understanding, that level of dependent arising, then to understand that level, you need to have understanding of emptiness. Is merely imputed, is merely designated. With that, then it refutes the existence from its own side, objectively by itself. So while you understand it exists by merely imputation, at the same time you understand it not exist from its own side or by itself. So there is, in that, there is a realization or understanding of emptiness with that. And so that is where you, in order to have realization of emptiness, you need to have that. When you have subtle understanding of dependent arising, then you have the understanding of emptiness. In some, there's, of course, there's sometimes a little bit of debate. We forget about the debates. Okay. Generally, first you have realization of emptiness, and then next you have realizing that more subtle dependent arisings. You have first you to practice meditation, you realize things are empty of inherent existence or existing by itself from its own side. But how do they exist? They exist by merely imputations. That comes later, after that. So it doesn't mean it do not exist, but they do exist, but the way they exist is through merely imputation, merely designations, merely nominal level by the mind, by the concept. And that is the subtle level of dependent arisings. Yeah.
That's the last question.
Okay, yeah.